Hi, and welcome to the episode 7 of the Mouthwash. And man, we have a whopper of a show tonight. We're doing new things, and I got a lot of buttons to push. And I got two really great guests on tonight, guest hosts for Ashton and Jacob. And we're going to hear from them in a little bit. They actually sent a little voice message in for everybody to remind you of our voicemail that you can leave. Let's see if we can get this. Yeah, we're going to put that up here. You can leave a voicemail for us, and we might play it on the air. It doesn't seem to be catching on too well, but we will do that. And so I have some guests tonight that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about elections and if they're fair, not fair. How do we get these candidates that maybe not the best choices? So I'm going to go ahead and let Mark introduce himself. He's going to be representing the left, and I'll tell you right now, usually it's Democrat and Republican. Hey, we have two Republicans tonight. One is probably the farthest left you can get, and one's probably the furthest right you can get, and we're going to have a civil conversation tonight. So, Mark, go ahead and introduce yourself. Give us a little background, and maybe tell us what the left used to be in the Republican Party.
That's a lot to cover in a real short thing.
Yeah, a minute.
Mark, I'm an attorney in Indianapolis, lifelong Hoosier, graduated from DePaul University, host podcast, Civil Discourse Now. That grew out of people. We had a Thursday night supper club where a bunch of us would sit around, and one person was so far right wing, and I was so far left. They were trying to keep us apart. But it turned out our views overlapped so much. We were closer together in views than anybody else. The two parties had conservative and liberal wings for years primarily because of the South. The Democratic Party had a lock on what was called the Solid South after the Civil War because of Reconstruction. After the Civil Rights Acts were introduced, early 60s, 1964 election, Barry Goldwater started calving off the Solid South from the Democratic Party, what was called the Southern Strategy. Not so much Nixon, but Lee Atwater did it, was aimed at nailing that part of the vote. So all of a sudden you had the Republican Party pushing out a liberal wing, which it always had, and the Democratic Party losing the Solid South. And that's where we came up with two parties that didn't have both wings. If you just view politics as having views.
You froze up there a little bit, Mark. So, okay, Bob, go ahead. Yeah, you're good now. You're good. Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about yourself. I'll put your little thing up here on the bottom. There you go.
My name is Bob Croddy. I'm from Indianapolis, Center Township. Actually, my family dates back 100 years in Center Township. I went to Cecina Memorial High School. I'm proud of that. I'm also from Little Flowers, so those who know that community in Center Township. But my family was Democrat, very Democrat growing up. We've been a part of the Marion County political environment for decades. I have a handwritten note to my grandmother from Robert Kennedy, thanking her for her help in the 60s. But you know, as I went as a boy to Garfield Park to shake Jimmy Carter's hand, and when I was a little boy, went to Jimmy Carter's inauguration. But at 19, 20 years old, I rejected everything I grew up to understand. And there's a lot of reasoning behind it. I'm not going to get into that. I work for Ross Perot State Headquarters. I've been involved politically for 35 years. And I've ran several campaigns in the state of Indiana. I've consulted Braun's campaign, other things that I've done along the way. But in 2016, I organized a grassroots operation for President Trump, who was a candidate at the time. Got to meet him. When the advance team came for Trump, they said they had never met a grassroots operation put together that met them at the gate like I had put together for President Trump. I was put on stage as one of the people who endorsed him. I'm proud to be a Trump supporter. But I wanted to also, the reason why I brought up my background of growing up is that, you know, you say I'm a far right guy, but actually I grew up poor in the inner city and a Democrat, and I think I see things very equally. I'm a freedom loving American is what I am, a U.S. constitutionalist type person who believes in preserving the country as we've always known it.
And that's a good point, Bob, because everybody just assumes you're far right if you're, you know, a Trump supporter. And I think that's what we get into a problem when we do a generalization of that. So now I'm going to go ahead and play the voicemails from the people that you're sitting in for. So let me get my stuff ready to go here, and we'll play. We're going to play Ashton's first.
It is Ashton.
Hold on a second. Let me get this again.
Hello, mouthwash friends. It is Ashton. I'm just over here enjoying my week off, sipping a margarita on the beach. Just kidding. That's not happening. I wish it was. But no, I just wanted to say good luck on the show tonight. Jacob and I are going to enjoy our week off, and we will see you next week.
Hey guys, this is Jacob. It's nice to have a little bit of a break this week because as much as I enjoy doing the show, it definitely takes a lot out of you. But I'm still looking forward to seeing you guys again next week. And I'm really hoping that Mark and Bob will have a nice spirited debate where they can get a lot across. And no offense to Mark, I really enjoyed debating him a lot. But I'm rooting for Bob on this one because you guys know I'm a pretty big MAGA Trump guy. So. Good luck, Bob. Good luck, Mark. And may the best man win. Bye-bye.
All right. That's awesome. So, you know, they've really, they just auditioned for this show. And they've got a good chemistry. And I think that you guys, when I was thinking about putting you together, I think, man, they'd have a good chemistry and very good on this topic because I know that, this is something that on a lot of people's mind. So now we're going to get to our guest. I'm going to bring on Chris Moore. Let me get some stuff going here in the right way that we got this. And nope, you don't go there. You go over there. You go up there. There we go. I think we have it now. So I'm going to let Chris introduce himself. I'll put his banner up on the bottom there. Hey, Chris, how you doing this evening? Thanks for coming on.
No, I'm doing all right, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you know, Chris is on his set, Your Voice, Your Call, and this is a little trivia for y'all, but we started Your Voice, Your Call about a year and a half ago, and I branched off and did Do Something Indie, and he kept Your Voice, Your Call going. And tell us a little bit about your show that you have going now, Chris.
Well, John, as you know, like we just said, we started the show off about a year and a half ago, and then this weekend will be a year. I put the show on the Patriot Soapbox Network every Saturday from 10 midnight and Sundays from 2 to 4. And we talk about politics. Season 2 is coming up, and we do everything from, like I said, politics to we're getting ready to launch shows about UFOs and just anything and everything. You know, some fun.
Yeah, well, and you know, we're all four of us are all Marion County Precinct Committee men, and tell us what that is.
Well, basically, just to make it say it easy, is we're in a precinct within our county. I'm in L52 Lawrence, and we are committee men that we come together at voting for whether it be county chairs or what have you for positions. We help vote if we want certain people in running for whether it be mayor or councils or whatever people we'd like to see in those positions. We get to go and vote as a group to do that.
Okay, so we recently had what we call a caucus, and a caucus is where the PCs get together, precinct committee men. In this case, vice precinct committee people got together, and we elected a county chair. So give me a little story about how that went this weekend and what you saw that may be irregular or maybe just fine.
Well, okay, we've known for a while a little bit about who was going to be running. I believe there was a point Cindy Mallory was going to run and then didn't. And then Michael Hart was going to run. And he's also a city councilman. And then just out of the blue, the caucus was last Saturday. And out of the blue, he drops out, and the state puts in their pick, Joe Elsner. So we all go to vote, and you were running. In fact, you were running for the position as well. And with all them dropping out, was you, Alex and Joe. And it just seemed kind of funny that they made everybody else drop out so Joe could run. And it was almost as if they were setting it up against you and Alex, which is how I took it. I don't know how Mark or Bob thinks, but yeah, that's what it looked like. So we go there downtown to the convention center to the second floor and well, the 256 checked in to vote. And then we listened to everybody's mission, meeting and their presentation. Joe couldn't even be there. He did it by video, pre-recorded video. You were there and Alex was there. And it just, I don't know. Honestly, I thought there should have been a lot better. I understand Joe's family, but he should have been there. You were there, put a great speech out. Not just saying that because we're friends, but that's how you had the best I felt in the whole group, and it just didn't seem, I don't know, on the up and up in my book.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play a clip here. And this is, you're so lucky. Everybody's so lucky to be involved in this. I'm going to play this new feature that we're doing on the show. I call it, What Does the Peeps in the Street Say? And this is Thomas Breedlove, the Indianapolis skateboard journalist. And then I'm going to play this clip, and it's going to talk about a little bit of what you just talked about. And then I'm going to bring it back on, and I'm going to have Bob and Mark ask you a couple questions, and we're going to continue that conversation. So everyone enjoy this.
Do you think political parties rig elections?
You could say a lot of stuff about that. Personally, I try to steer clear of politics as much as I can because I say one wrong thing and I get punched.
No, I totally understand. If you guys don't want to talk about that, that's an answer in and of itself.
Yeah.
That tells us where we are in this world. The follow-up question, which I'm sure you're not going to want to answer, is do you think the presidential election was rigged?
I will say I'm glad Donald Trump is not president.
Do you think things will be better now?
Yes, I'm not saying Joe Biden is the best person we could possibly get, but anything is better than Trump at this point, honestly. And I'm just glad that he wasn't re-elected. So
take care, guys. It was nice to meet you.
You too.
There's one image of God. And remember, God was telling us, the children of Israel, who the only people on the planet that heard God's voice from the mountain of Mount Sinai.
Hey,
we're the only people he chose to hear his voice.
Can I ask you a couple questions for a video?
He spoke to us face to face.
Listen, let me just ask you. I'm not trying to get you off track here, but I got to ask you these two questions and see what you think. Do you think political parties rig elections?
Yes, it's all a scam. It's all rigged.
Do you think the last election was rigged?
Can I say this real quick?
Yeah.
It's all a farce because they're not the Constitution. The Constitution is the Republic. And the Republic only points to the 3/5 persons in Article 1, Section 2. That's the ex-slave. See, it all goes back again to the children of Israel.
And there you have it, John. 4 U of I students who don't want to touch any political hot potatoes, and one Hebrew Israelite street preacher who says the whole system is rigged. Reporting from downtown Indianapolis, I'm Tom Breedlove, the Indianapolis skateboard journalist.
All right. Well, we got a big fan for, that might be Tom's wife. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Bob, if you have any questions of Chris that you might want to ask about the caucus, or maybe something that you noticed in that regard. And then also, I want to open that up to a question about the national election, too, because I know that you expressed some feelings that you wanted to talk about that. So any of that's fair game. Chris is on a national show, so I'm sure he could field these questions, right, Chris? There, you're on the hot seat now.
We'll try.
All right.
Well, I did want to say that I don't want to deny the credentials of being conservative, because I am conservative, And I didn't realize that I was in the intro that I could have had an opportunity to plug the People's Grassroots Campaign. I run the Trump, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan People's Grassroots Campaign and its news, the national news page. And certainly look for us on Facebook. A lot of activity that way you'll see. But as far as the caucus goes and these types of setting things up, what I've noticed over the years, over the decades of being involved, is there's always something behind the scenes with the county chairman, with stacking the deck. They're always trying to get their people in position to win a primary. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much behind the scenes goes on by the time it gets to the primary, such as slating conventions and slating positions. So I don't really have a question for Chris, but certainly willing to talk about how things get stacked.
Yeah, Chris, we've had some experience in how this works. Why don't you run down, say you're going to run for mayor or something, run that down, how that works, who comes to you and what happens and how they do that. Look, Mark's getting ready. I'll get to you, Mark. You get your chance in a second. So go ahead.
Well, first, I love seeing the skateboard journalist out there. He does a whole new unique style to us. So kudos to him. And secondly, I have to agree with Bob. The parties work together. They stack it against us. Those of us who can actually make a change or try to do something different for the party and for the people. So you and I, John, ran into that when we were running for mayor. They tried to buy us out. They tried to convince us to, walk away and not run and offer us positions or whatever. And it's what they do. They don't want someone like you or I in there to make a difference. And last weekend was an example. You running for the chair. It just showed you. They pulled Michael Hart out. They had them all drop down. They tried to do things. Didn't even try to change a law or something to allow someone to run, and that didn't work. So here we are. And they put their guy in. So I have to agree with Bob on that.
Yeah. So Mark, what do you think we can do possibly to make these processes fair? And it's not just a point of interest. This happens on the Democrat side, Republican side, probably even the Libertarian side. Who knows? But we're talking from our experience. Looks like Bob went in the dark. There he is. He's back again. So Mark, what do you think we can do to possibly change that, or have some commentary on that?
Okay.
What can we do to change it?
Okay, I will want to address Bob's position as conservative and a Trump person, but not now because we're talking local politics here.
That's a different show, Mark.
What's going on? Huh? But what's
going
on behind the scenes?
Show.
Rex Early described. Yeah, true. But Rex Early in his autobiography described mummy dummies, which is how he described PCs, precinct committee people in the county who were appointed. And that's an important distinction. I'm elected. They can't remove me just for the hell of it. If they're appointed, if the position is empty, then if the person votes against the way the chair who's appointed them wants to vote, they can remove somebody else in. The overwhelming majority are PCs. So that means that the county chair now has a much greater scope of authority than they used to. And just so people out there who don't understand the structure of the county party, you've got the county chair, you've got 9 townships, and within the townships, you have precincts. And so that goes down, and that's how it works up and how you're all supposed to vote. But I thought that everything was set before people went in, just like everything is set years before on any development or money being handed out in this county, because ultimately it's the Green Party that runs everything here, and that has nothing to do with ecology.
All right.
I can talk about the process real quick if you allow me.
Yeah, Bob.
Okay,
Jump in,
so what happens is behind the scenes, they put their people in position to win primaries. So it starts with the county chairman situation. It goes to the ward chairman. It goes to, in a big city like Indianapolis, it goes to the township chairman. But they organize themselves early on through appointed precinct committeemen or with the consensus of the elected precinct committeemen. But all of that is before the primary. So people go and run a primary and they think that the primary is going to be just me versus them. It's not. It's you versus the establishment. And the establishment doesn't want to change the status quo. They want to keep business as usual. They want to keep control. So therefore, if it's a state rep or if it's a city councilor or even if it's a board member to the township board, you're going to run across the establishment, putting together the ingredients, sometimes a year to 6 months in advance, and go through what's called a slating convention. They endorse the candidate, then they put them up there. And, I've ran a couple of campaigns where I've actually beat the endorsed candidate by the Marion County Republican Party. And that's what has to happen eventually if you run a primary, is you're not just running the primary. I think a lot of people think they wake up, they say, I want to run for Congress or I want to run for, school board. And they don't realize there's a whole mechanism going on before, months in advance of their decision.
Yeah, and that's.
Could I just add to that also? One thing that they've done that's really increased the ability of the party leaders to control things on the PCs is, it used to be precinct committee people were elected every 2 years. Now it's every 4. So that gives a lot more ability for the county chairs to have in place people they want. And if somebody says, I want to try and do something, well, they're going to have to wait 4 years. Or if they get screwed like the county chair caucus, not saying that happened, then they're going to have to wait another 4 years.
Yeah, and the process is nobody really gives you a map when you start that. Chris, I know when you and we basically got into the politics 3 years ago around the same time. And did you get any training or anybody tell you what to do? In fact, it might have been the opposite. What do you say about that?
Yeah, John, nobody said, well, this is how we do the process. You and I jumped in basically feet first and let's go for it. And, we learned as we went along how they play their games. So, yeah, there's no guide or book that tells you how to do it.
So to keep our topic here of how to get fair elections, I think, and I put in this title, is we have our choices don't seem like choices. I think what we're talking about here is how it eliminates the competition. And, it's tough. I mean, you got somebody that wants to do these things, yet, you're discouraged and you don't know how the system works. And then you have this undercurrent of behind the scenes things working. How do you think we could fix that? I'm going to start with Mark on this one, go to Bob, then go to you, Chris. What do you think? What do you see that's going to help us with how to make these fair? I mean, for a better sense of the term.
Local, you want local, state, or national?
Yes.
Let me do all three. Okay, you've got a problem with political parties were not favored by the framers of the Constitution. In fact, they were opposed. They arose anyway. As litigation went through the years, you've got a balance between the right of people to associate and free speech. And the notion is that there's a freedom of association. It's essentially a freedom to advance shared beliefs. And that was part of a case in 1932. Well, it's not so much anymore. If you look at the Republican Articles of Incorporation, there's no statement of ideology there. And I looked at the Democratic parties. I don't think there's anything there. It's just the purpose of the corporations, and their corporations are to make contracts and to engage in all lawful business activities. They're corporate entities. And political parties didn't start out as being corporate entities. They were just kind of informal associations. So what you have now is you have corporate entities that have built themselves a defense mechanism so people can't challenge the leadership, and the parties themselves are now controlling our government instead of the voters so much. And I think that's really a thing we have to change. And the only thing the ways you can change it are litigation, I don't think so, or by getting people elected who say, let's do things where, okay, it's got to be a corporation. You've got to have a business entity to do something. It's not going to be a sole proprietorship or a partnership, but you make it a special kind of corporation that can't restrict people's rights to free association, and they can't do things. That's legitimate in corporate law.
Yeah, that's very good. Short answer for that. And sorry, I had to move the screens around. My wife made a suggestion that I make us all four the same size. And so, hey, this is only the episode 7, so we're still experimenting with some things. And I am only a one-man band here trying to do this. So, Bob, what do you see as a possible solution or a fix? It sounds like you've already beat the system a couple times. So, how could you expand on that?
Well, when Mark referred to the Constitution says that every 2 years the U.S. House of Representatives is up for re-election. The reason why that's the case is to bring new blood in quick if something needs to be changed quickly. The fact of the matter is the way that these parties have done things, they keep the establishment in power. They keep the status quo in power. The idea was to change things quickly. And it's not changing things quickly when they're beholden to the establishment at the U.S. House level or any of these situations. So what I'm saying is we're not getting the change that many of us desire quickly or sometimes at all because our people get through the primary process sporadically, a little bit at a time. Some of these people squeak through. And as far as because they have to run against the establishment, the party mechanisms, everything that is established before you run a primary, you have usually someone who's endorsed. And I did run a couple of times against the party itself, and I beat him in a primary. And also with President Trump, when I came in and endorsed him pre-primary and helped his campaign run a grassroots operation in Indiana, we had the governor not supporting President Trump. We had several people, county chairman. I was running against the establishment when we did that deal. So, in a way, although Trump's like the master, aide in that, it's not like you had to get a guy to limp across the finish line with Trump. I mean, Trump was a strong, powerful message man, no matter what. But we had to go against the establishment. A lot of these people want nothing to do with it. And so it's that same spirit, though, whether it's the U.S. House or even the mayor's race. The people, if the people want to have their voices heard, they've got to either get involved at the precinct committeeman level as a run for that, run for state delegate, get engaged that way, or they've got to manufacture and man a campaign against the establishment in a primary battle, and they need to be ready for it. Raising money, strong name ID, they got to be ready for it. They can't just go in with we the people running against the establishment and the party and think that they're going to win just because we're we the people. You got to have your A game together and meet them with force meeting force. You can't have the establishment, the Republican Party, run a primary against you and you have no assets, no skills, nothing to go with. You just show up, you're going to get smoked every time.
Yeah, it is a daunting task, and I think they sort of remind you of that so that you'll be discouraged and go away. I'm just hard-headed enough, and Chris is too. I can speak for him that, and you're not going anywhere, and hey, Mark's not going anywhere. So, it doesn't work on people that are really in it for the right reasons. And we're going to be here, and we're going to be speaking our voice. And I don't want you to get this mistaken for we're going against the party or whatever. We are basically talking about transparency and fairness for anyone that wants to run. So, Chris, what would you see? Or what would you like to say about how we could make it a little bit better? I think Mark and Bob made excellent points there.
On that, there's really not much to add to it. Their points are dead on. I mean, and then you're added, we have to have transparency. The problem is a lot of them don't go with the Constitution. And I mean, you see that nationally. I mean, they've been in there for years and doing nothing. So it's like a power trip or a greed of money or however you want to put it. But that's why people like us need to get in there. As Bob said, infiltrate, not in a bad way, but start getting these positions that helps make these changes to make it fair for anybody else that wants to run. I mean, both of them, but all the guys put dead on. So you can't really add much to it except for that.
Yeah. Here's a question for you, Bob, from Penny Bigelow. Bob, are you running for an office?
Well, if people have asked me about the Congress and that type of thing, I hate Washington, D.C. I've been to Washington, D.C. 3 times in the last 120 days, and I can't think of a worse place to live in my life. I can't imagine. I mean, you can't even carry a gun, and I have a permit to carry, and I carry everywhere I go. I'm ready. But, Washington, D.C., you're not even allowed to have a gun. The whole place is nasty. So that's the only thing that interests me, and I don't think I want to do that. So I don't think I'll be running for office anytime soon. I help candidates. I'm looking to recruit a candidate against Todd Young. I think that needs to happen. I think he's very much a status quo guy. He's not a very good leader. And so I've got a good conversation with a high, well-known person here that I think we might be able to challenge Todd Young. So I'm kind of I want to be behind the scenes. I operate several small businesses. And so I've kind of focused on what I do that way.
Yeah, and I do want to thank both you, Mark, and Chris, for coming on, taking some time, because I know you're all busy. I have a question here about, as some of you know or don't know, I ran as an independent. And Bob, did you say that you helped with Ross Perot? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, when I was a young man, I was a Democrat at 18. I was a precinct committeeman, and I've been a precinct committeeman, state delegate, and all the rest. But my transition year in 1992, I worked at Ross Perot State headquarters, and then I became a Republican precinct committeeman. But I am a Republican, so I don't want anyone to think that we're talking to get us versus them. I don't like the establishment, the status quo. I don't like the people that scratch your back, you scratch mine. I don't like all that. But I am a Republican. It's a two-party system, and I am definitely part of the Republican Party. So I don't want anyone to think otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that one of the points I'd like to make is competition makes us stronger. I know when I was running track or riding bikes or racing people, I want to race against the strongest guy because it makes me better. So here's a question about the signatures. And I know we've had a little run against the Libertarians because their governor, they got a little close on some stuff there. So Mark, what about the Secretary of State situation? So let me explain that real quick, what Lisa's talking about here. So if you run as an independent, you are required to get 2% of the votes cast for the Indiana Secretary of State. And which, if you're running for a councilman, if you take your district and whatever that was, for instance, in my case, I ran for mayor of Indianapolis, and in Marion County, 2% of that was 6,108 signatures I had to get. Now, does anybody know how many signatures you need to get for Congress or a senator or for governor in the 5 or 9
for
districts?
Congress.
How much?
None for Congress.
It is. No, I think it's
None.
500 per district.
It's only for the U.S. Senate. I believe it's 1,500 per congressional
Senate.
district for the U.S. Senate. I don't know about independent because I'm not independent and I'm not independent races. I'm a Republican. It's a two-party system. In my opinion, as a political guy, strategist, it's a two-party system. This notion of a third party, we would need a lot. It's kind of like a candidate coming to me with no assets and saying, "Hey, I want to run for no name ID, no money, no ability to raise money." That's not legitimate. You have legitimate stuff in place to have a third party. So until that happens, it's a two-party system. I'm Republican.
Yeah, well, and they just make it harder and harder. My thing is, why don't you make it 2% of the office that you're running for? And I don't, have a problem with getting signatures, but you need to run for governor, you need 500 signatures in each of the 9 districts, which is 4,500 total. And if you remember, Todd Young did not get his signatures, but they let him on the ballot. So, Mark, I'm going to ask this question. I see you getting ready to do something there because Mark represented me in my lawsuit against the city and the state because they were throwing out my signatures of registered voters. So, Mark, go ahead, expand on this for me.
Okay. From the framers were concerned that the members of the state legislatures would make rules that would favor themselves because they were incumbents. And they were afraid that would be a trend through time. It has been. When you look at the rules for signatures and the forms that they had, and they were ambiguous forms, it said, list your address. Well, what address? Well, the address is supposed the address you had when you registered. But if you live in the same district, and was it 100 of our signatures they threw out were legally legit. They just hadn't registered the address next to their name at which they lived when they originally registered to vote. So it's ambiguity, and they use those ambiguities to their advantage. And the only way you can get that changed is either through the General Assembly, good luck, or through the Secretary of State saying we're going to change our forms, which, if you'll recall, they said in a couple of hearings, oh, we're going to change those forms. Once they'd won, well, they didn't have to change the forms so much. That went down on their list of priorities.
Yeah, we were
And in
hoping
terms
to
of
get that
Secretaries of
switch.
State, a different thing. I wish somebody would do something about stopping Michigan and Kentucky from taking our basketball players. That's a different section.
Hey.
Let me say this about the two-party system. I do think that both the parties are in cahoots to make sure it stays a two-party system, which I don't think, going to what Mark's saying, I don't think that that's what the founding fathers had really thought. They have they've retrenched in the notion that it's a two-party system. So it makes it very difficult for another party to come about.
Okay, to be fair, here's a question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Mark. I didn't know what. Go ahead, rebuttal on that.
I'm not right now. Ask me later.
That's a different show. Wait a second. Here we go. Here's the question. So Adam Harvey asked, is CJ Moore or Mark Small running for office? What do you guys got? Anything you want to disclose today or anything? That?
What? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I said not right now. Go ahead, CJ.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll announce that when the time's right, John. If we are.
Okay. Well, here's Adam Harvey.
About the framers. What Bob just said about the framers and how they created a structure that naturally gave itself to a two-party system. What happened after that? I mean, Adams was opposed to two parties, then later used it for his benefit. Jefferson and Madison were kind of planning that whole thing, and it naturally evolved from that. Once third parties started springing up, like in the 20 years before the Civil War, things were kind of falling apart, and then it went back into a two-party system. Since like the 1880s, 1890s, when state general assemblies, whatever the legislatures are called in individual states, have gained a greater ability to regulate their elections and parties, the two parties have put things into their statutes, as they have here in Indiana, to make it really, really difficult for a so-called third party to compete. So if you put the effort in to try to start a third party, it's going to take you 20 years to really get going on that. And they make it an absurdity.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to,
Yeah.
All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit because we're going to say adios to our guest, Chris, and you can catch him. Chris, go ahead and plug your show real quick and where they can find it and all that. I got the banner running on the bottom there.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that, John. Your Voice, Your Call. Again, the show John and I started and proud of. Season 2 starts this coming weekend. We're on Patriot Soapbox. You can find them. I'm at 10 p.m. to midnight and on Saturdays, 2 to 4 on Sundays. You can find us on DLive, some YouTube channels, Facebook, and their own webpage, We the People. So, yeah, you can find us all over. And we're getting ready to start, John, a new website. Putting that together for all of our shows to be come together and be able to do live streaming and get out there and get our information out so we're not getting censored. Yeah,
that's a whole nother show itself, censored and cancel culture. So, Chris, I appreciate you being on this evening. Hey, this was good. We'll do this again. So
thanks guys
for coming on, and we'll see you later. All right, guys, as promised, Bob, you wanted to talk about some national election things, and this will be interesting on this. So if anybody has any comments in the chat, maybe about the election. So I'm going to start this with Bob, and give me your overview on, was there some shenanigans going on in this election, and give us an overview on that.
We just experienced the greatest election fraud in U.S. history. And I find it very troubling that people like Senator Todd Young didn't speak up on the floor to reject the electors, to speak up on behalf of the 57% of the people in Indiana who voted for President Trump. He didn't do anything. He didn't even, from when I confronted him on January 6th face to face, I asked him, did you even review the testimony? There were thousands of sworn testimonies of various things, from naked ballots to the people, watchers being kicked out, not able to validate signatures. There were lots of different situations, lots of different testimony. Did you review any of it? His answer was he totally avoided the question. If you watch that video that I produced, you'll see that he's totally evading and avoiding because he didn't watch anything. He didn't analyze anything. And he was meant to go to Washington, D.C. to fight for the people of Indiana, and he failed. And that's why we're recruiting a candidate to run against him in the primary coming up.
Okay, and you can see that video on your Facebook. Is that right? Is that
Yeah,
where?
If you go to Trump, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan People's Grassroots Campaign, it's pinned to the top. Now, I run the Trump People's Grassroots Campaign national news page. We have 21 pages and over 100 groups. So we have a massive social media operation that I operate, and with other people engaged in the process of helping. We're about getting everyday people involved at the county level to get things done politically.
Yeah, and I put that on the bottom there, and I apologize, Mark. I want you to talk about civil discourse now. I had a ticker made for you, but apparently it got lost in translation. Okay. So talk about that. Answer Bob first, and then plug your civil discourse.
First of all, you got to realize, in 2017, I represented women in Massachusetts who sought to nullify the election in 2016 because of Russian interference in it. You talk about disenfranchisement in the last election of people in Indiana through the winner-take-all system of electoral disbursements of the electors. We disenfranchise a lot of people every election, but this last time it would have been 81 million people who were the majority. There was no fraud in this last election, and the most important thing that was done was getting somebody who was the most incompetent individual to ever occupy that office of president since Andrew Jackson. So that's where I am on that. Bob and I are going to disagree, going down to the floor on that. As far as Todd Young, I don't like him as a senator, but for different reasons.
Are you pro-life, Mark?
I sure am. I'm against the death penalty, and I believe women should have a complete control of their bodies.
So you're pro-choice?
I'm pro-choice because that's pro-life.
Don't confuse it with weird ways of making your case. Just say it.
No,
hey,
I'm
for abortion. Just say it.
No, I'm for. I can't get pregnant, so I'm not going to tell women what to do with their bodies.
Okay. Well, I think that answers a lot of questions for a lot of people.
Are you against the death penalty?
Do you know how many people have died of the death penalty in the last 50 years?
Oh, not very many.
Right. Do you know how many abortions there have been in the last 50 years?
How many people? None.
No, how many? Over 40, 50 million people have died by abortion.
No, they haven't.
We're about 1,500 in the death penalty.
Bob, look at science.
You're talking about people, most of everyone there was a heinous crime situation, like 1,500, 2,000 death penalty cases. So the moral equivalency is not even close. As far as abortion,
no, it's not even close because you're talking about fetuses and they're not real humans. If you read Roe versus Wade, you'll see the history.
A 9-month fully formed human child in the womb. You voted for a guy who was okay with that?
Actually, I voted for somebody who didn't go far enough to protect women's rights. Read Roe versus Wade. Abortion has been recognized as
Did you vote for Joe Biden?
Granted at the time of the Constitutional
Did you vote for Joe Biden?
I'm sorry?
Did you vote for Joe Biden?
I don't have to disclose my vote to anybody in the state of Indiana.
I'm proud of who I voted for, so I have no problem disclosing it.
Okay, so this is where this is a whole 3 different shows, and I just want to point out that this is the kind of conversation we need to have within our party because we are in the same party, and this is where I think we. Do
you know, Mark, that sworn testimony came forth that said in Arizona there were tens of thousands of open ballots, naked ballots presented. Now, she's either a liar or a sworn testimony. She might be a liar.
Georgia,
she's either a liar or she's not a liar.
Trump committed treason. He's going to be going down really bad in history.
How did he commit treason? Where is that coming from?
Because he's kind of on the take from the Russians. He's in.
Okay, it's time to get the metal hats on now, because did you get on the metal hat thing going already, or what?
No,
that's a conspiracy theory.
The New York Times today, they disclosed. Bob, read the news.
How many millions are we going to spend on the Russian crap?
It's not crap.
Okay.
it really is dangerous. How much are you going to spend on crap about non-existent voter fraud or
650,000 ballots?
Emails.
650,000 ballots were counted in Philadelphia without a Republican watcher. I have friends kicked out in Detroit, Michigan, Wayne County, Michigan. I have friends that were kicked out by the dozens, weren't allowed to watch signature validation. A record low signature validation rate. How do you explain a record low signature validation rate? We're not talking about a little low. We're talking about 2 points lower.
It's all been tossed mostly by Republican judges, Bob. And what about the suppression of votes so that the Republicans can push laws in places to prevent people that don't have the same color skin as us and are more inclined to vote for Democratic Party candidates?
There's no suppression. What, they can't get an ID?
No, I'm talking about Republicans are trying to limit early voting by mail, which Trump did actually. And,
why do we want ballots thrown across the country, mass mailed out ballots all throughout Georgia? Why would we want that? That is voter fraud in the right.
Oh, that's crap. That was a Secretary of State in Georgia. Those are Republicans.
You're saying voter suppression.
You rejected any claims of fraud, Bob.
All right, we're going to have to call
we need to make it easier to vote. We need to have strict laws and expectations that both parties agree on. Right now, the Democrat Party is trying to ramrod all this crap on us that we don't agree with. We need to have a game that we all agree on. And it's not
a game. It's our right. It's our liberty.
All right. Hey, peace. Time out for a second. I appreciate the passion on this. And you know what? Honestly, there's a lot of people in our country that are at this state. I mean, that we feel like the elections do not bring out our best candidates, and that there's a little bit of there's a lot of, I guess not so much faith in the election process. And I think when we get down to that problem, honestly, the only thing that separates us from Venezuela is our vote. And when our vote starts getting screwed with, that's when people get upset. And I appreciate the passion. And my question always is going to be, how do we fix it? Let's go with Mark first. What do you think about how do we fix this? Like you talked about voter suppression. I think that there should be a better system on how we vote. I mean, it seems like there can be a lot of manipulation when you have an extended voting period. But at the same time, if you try to have everybody vote in one day, some people won't go because they can't make it. So what do you suggest?
When I worked registering voters at the 4-H County Fair in 1974, both parties were working at trying to get as many people registered as possible. And the idea is it should be the goal of both parties that 100% of the people eligible to vote are registered, and 100% of the people who are registered to vote. And then both parties, or every party, whoever's a candidate, makes their pitch to the voters. And it shouldn't be through, for example, gerrymandering. When the Democrats were in charge, had majorities in the General Assembly here in Indiana, they sought to gerrymander as much as possible. That should be something that you can't outlaw gerrymandering as such, but you should try to apportion votes in something that's not the gerrymandering system, which has been in this political system in our country since right after the Constitution was ratified. But those are the things you do, and you try to make sure people have the ability to vote, and you make it easier for them to vote. And sure, you make sure that there's security on voting, but this was the most secured election we've ever had.
Well, before you go, Bob, one of the things about what Mark's talking about, every 10 years we do a census, and according to that census numbers, which this time has been jacked up because of COVID, they redraw districts. And so whoever in charge gets to redraw the district. Now here in Indiana, the Democrats are in charge in Marion County, so they get to redraw all the Marion County districts. But outside of that, the state party is Republican, so they redraw the districts to say suit them. Now the problem is, in 10 years, those districts can start getting competitive and we get good candidates. And then guess what? The party comes back in and redraws it. So, and I would say, let's do this, Bob. I'll throw this out. We just came off of a caucus, but Iowa picks their presidential candidates by caucuses. I would be in favor of doing caucuses where people get together and talk about it, and then they have a representative go, like a mini electoral college. What do you got any ideas on that, or any thoughts about that, or do you have another idea?
No, I'm still stuck on the greatest election fraud in U.S. history we just experienced. And I'm sorry, Mark doesn't understand it. If he would have reviewed the affidavits, the thousands of affidavits, things like in Antrim County where 6,800 votes were flipped. New Hampshire is claiming right now, New Hampshire is claiming that the same thing happened there. There is election fraud, voter harvesting in Minneapolis, where Project Veritas found a guy going around collecting hundreds of ballots. He's only supposed to have, by law, 3 ballots on him. It's voter harvesting, where they go from apartment to apartment, knocking on doors, getting people to just, for a candy bar, to vote for their guy. This is not what the founding fathers had in mind, and it's happening by the hundreds of thousands of voter harvesting. They stole this election in 6 counties in this country: Atlanta, Fulton County, Wayne County, which is Detroit, Philadelphia, Arizona, Phoenix area, Nevada, Las Vegas, Clark County, and Milwaukee County. Those 6 counties, they did everything they could to manufacture a fraudulent election. They abused the laws, the state constitution in Pennsylvania. They abused the laws in Wisconsin. Nobody's holding them accountable. And if you want to remedy to all this, we need to shed the light. We need to be engaged in the process and shed the light of what just happened. We need to review those affidavits. All those people need to go to jail for lying under oath, or they were telling the truth, and we have a serious problem in this country, and we better get to the bottom of it before 2022, because it's only going to get worse. The HR1 is a destructive mechanism in this country. And I don't even think it's constitutional. Maybe even Mark would agree with that. The bill that's proposed by the House that just passed the House of Representatives, it's ridiculous. It's basically everything they just did on steroids. We as Republicans demand a even playing. We want a game that both of us agree on. If we're going to play Monopoly, if we're going to play euchre, we're all in a game. We're all in agreement with how the game's played. I'm saying half the population's not in agreement with what just happened.
Yeah, well,
it's less than half the population. It's not a majority of the population. It's less than half the Republican
Maybe
Party.
they should educate themselves.
No, wait. So if you want to talk about the affidavits and the fraud and everything from 2020, you can look at how 40,000 votes swung the election in 2016 that Trump lost. He lost.
They did the same thing in 2016.
Lost everything, all his
All
life.
they did was
and he
amp
lost
up what
the
they
last
did in
election
2016.
by
Okay.
2016
plus
too.
votes.
They cheated in 2016 too. They just amplified it in 2020 and used the COVID-19 fear to mass mail out ballots to anybody and everybody so they could voter harvest the whole thing to death.
Lost.
Our country's
All
on the
right, all
verge
right.
of ruin,
Times.
and it's because
I'm gonna,
people don't want to
loser.
stand up and stop what's going on in this country with voter fraud.
Okay, well, I'm telling you what,
Ivy League.
we started out slow on this one, but we're getting close to out of time.
Did you just make fun of my character, Mark?
I'm sorry?
You didn't just make fun of my character, did you?
No, I made
Okay.
fun of Trump. I wouldn't make fun of you. I was making fun of Trump.
Okay.
Yeah. This was, and you know what? The passion is there, and you know, this is months after this election, and there's still unanswered questions for everyone. And I know
there should be passion. And look, we can disagree right now, but the thing that's caused things to get to this point is people not giving a shit. Sorry about my language, but that's the thing.
Man,
so when we're yelling at each other, that's what should be. So I look forward to this. Okay.
We should demand voter integrity. I think Democrat and Republican alike. I grew up Democrat, like I mentioned. I've been a Republican all my adult life. We should demand a fair and free election, and everyone needs to get to the bottom of this. And for them to sweep it under the rug, sweep these affidavits under the rug, and act like it didn't happen, I'm saying that's the worst thing we could be doing as a country right now. We want 2022 to be fair, and we want to be able to know that we go out and we cast our ballot, it counts. And I have a lot of other more problems with what happened on election day, more to Indiana that I could talk about. I don't know if we have time for all that, but Indiana, we need to decentralize the elections. That's the bottom line. We don't need to centralize elections. We need to get them back to the precincts, get them away from Lucas Oil Stadium, get them away from township offices, and get them back to the precincts, the neighborhoods, and let the precinct committeemen count the votes again.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good ending where both agree that we need fair elections. And that really ties this thing up and puts a bow on it because that's all we really need. We need fair elections that we have competition in so we can get candidates that actually can help, turn the tide and speak for the constituents. I mean, I've seen Bob talk about his senator that hasn't represented him and the way that he
Our
thinks.
senator. It's our senator.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a lot of work to be done here. So now I appreciate you guys being on. We're going to do the conspiracy theory here. So hopefully you'll stick with me on this and we will, hold on. I'm going to put my little banner up here with the disclaimer if I can find it. Okay, here you go. This disclaimer on the bottom. I'm going to play the intro. So get your tinfoil hats on if you have them. And here.
Hey y'all, it's time for the conspiracy theory, so you better get your tinfoil hat out and let's see what's going on this week.
All right, and I got one of my antennas is off here. Okay, there we go. I'm better now. So, Mark, you look like you got your tinfoil hat on there backwards, but I'm not sure. But I
went to the planet. I was in Allen County today. So I was reading the Articles of Confederation, and then I slipped and fell in the bathroom and struck my head. And then I realized that they only did the Constitutional Convention to avoid Canada from being part of the United States, because Article 11 of the Articles of Confederation states, Canada, acceding to this confederation and joining in the measures of the United States, shall be admitted into and entitled to all the advantages of this union, but no other colony shall be admitted into the same unless such admission be agreed to by 9 states. We avoided mayonnaise on our cheeseburgers that way. We avoided Canadian bacon. We avoided a lot of things. It was a conspiracy, I'm telling you that. That's why they did the Constitution.
Well, Molson's got through, so that's all right. So, Bob, what do you have for us as far as conspiracy? Hold on, I gotta get my antenna up. There we go. Ready.
Well, I think that it's very possible when you think of China, when you think of France coming into the American Revolution, the French coming in on the side of the colonial army. I think it's very possible that the Chinese could care less about their own people. They unleashed a virus to come across the country, around the world, to manipulate our elections, and they were in cahoots with the Democrat Party as a conspiracy. I don't have any proof on this, but I can see how this has undermined our entire existence. This coronavirus, our freedom, they're pushing socialism, they're amping up socialism, and a lot of it's not even, you can't even point to things like, the mortality rate it doesn't rise to the level of the control that they put on the population. So I think that the conspiracy is that the Chinese use this as a bioweapon, and the Democrat Party's in cahoots with this to take control, to take power, and to manipulate our elections, and to run a fraudulent campaign with mass mail ballots.
Now that
light up, Bob. This is supposed to be a humorous thing.
Yeah, well,
I thought it was a conspiracy idea, so I threw it out there.
Yeah, well, if you read on the bottom there, these are conspiracy theories, are strictly for entertainment purposes only, but that one may be a little bit there. But mine's going to be a little lighter. If you're an IU basketball fan, this is going to be a conspiracy theory that I'm sure you probably already know about. But, Archie Miller was fired, but it took $10 million to buy out his contract. And mysteriously, there was a donor or 2 donors that came forward. Well, I'm going to tell you who that donor was. It was Mark Cuban. I mean, I know that comes to a shock, but Mark Cuban's the person that he was the one donor says, hey, he's got to go. I mean, think about it. He's got that. He owns the Spurs or whatever, San Antonio's. He already owns a professional basketball team. So why not buy a college one? So there's my conspiracy. And it's probably about as true as all of ours that we just said, I'd say. So with that being said, everybody give the peace out. It's been a great show, and let's do it again next time. We'll have our regular hosts back, and we will. I appreciate you guys coming on. Spirited talk. I think that's how we all feel about our election. We have an opinion. We express it, and man, we want some answers. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. live.